The People Station. You know what I'm saying? Choice FM 9210.
People Station, Choice FM 9210. Very pleasant good afternoon to everyone. My name is Chuck Johnson, and this is a special show being brought to you by Choice FM News. As everyone knows, these are very interesting and somewhat trying times, both in the United States and definitely here in North Carolina. And we had the opportunity to have a conversation with a very, I'm going to say impressive group of people this afternoon. So we wanted to do a special show for Choice FM News this afternoon. On the line with me, I'm going to start just with my list, not in terms of importance or wonderfulness in the world. On the line with us, we have Marcus Bass, Deputy Director of the North Carolina Black Alliance. We have with us William Clayton, and we also have with us State Senator Kandie Smith. Good afternoon to everyone on the line. How's everybody doing?
Doing wonderfully well.
And I am doing great, and thank you so much for inviting us and having us on.
Indeed.
Doing good, Chuck. Thanks to Choice FM for this conversation, this opportunity.
Indeed. So we've got two things that have occurred during the week, two things that I know we wanted to start with as conversation. Number one being DEI Bill, anti-DEI Bill 171. That's what I've been calling it since I've been reading up on it. And the second thing is we've had an issue this week with the North Carolina Democratic Party and the Eva Clayton Scholarship. So the group of people that we have on with us today are here to talk about these two issues because they are both very pressing to the well-being of these Black citizens here in the state and citizens overall in the state of North Carolina. And I'm hoping I could start with Senator Smith. Senator Smith is the representative for District 5, Pitt County, Edgecombe County. And I was hoping we could start with talking about the DEI bill.
So thank you so much for bringing this up. And if you want to talk about the DEI bill, it's crazy. I'm I'm a very, very direct person. I'll just let you know that. But this bill, it's unfortunate that we have someone filing this, because to me, when I look at everything that's happening, it's almost like they are trying to erase Black, and you can't do that. And so we're looking at what's being stated, but it doesn't give you a clear definition of, when they say DEI, what that truly really means. Mm-hmm. But it says things like no state agency shall promote, support, fund, implement, or maintain workplace DEI programs, policies, or initiatives, including but not limited to using DEI in state government hirings and employment, and maintaining dedicated DEI staff positions or offices, or offering or requiring diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So if you just look at that as a whole, anything that shows that you're trying to promote diversity, anything that shows that you're trying to promote equality, and anything that's trying to promote inclusion, it looks like they don't want that. They don't care if it's in hiring. They don't care if it's in positions. All of those things are what they are trying to come after. And so it is something I encourage everybody to take some time to read, because when you do, it opens your eyes. Because so many times we say things because we're elected and people hear us talking, but when you see it for yourself, it's completely different. So they don't want any public funds for DEI. So they're trying to do every single thing they can to come after every single thing they can, which means they're making excuses about things. Because just because something says Black, you're going to automatically say, well, it can't say Black. Is that DEI? Like, I'm trying to find out what their true definition is. But they don't want to offend others, is what they're saying.
From your point of view, and from your vantage point, what have been the effects of DEI on Eastern North Carolina, on Raleigh, on Black North Carolina itself?
Well, if you look at what's been happening from the federal all the way down, what we're doing is copying what they're doing from the federal level. And so there's people who've already lost their jobs. Individuals who work on bases, individuals who are in federal positions, they've lost jobs.
Well,
The other part,
my question is actually because you'll hear people say, well, how does DEI, how does it even affect me? How has it benefited me? And, with all of these attacks, we've seen negative. And I was just wondering from your vantage point, what have been the positive outcomes of DEI over the past few years?
well, the positive outcome about it is you've had an opportunity to be able to get jobs, because now instead of them overlooking us, instead of them saying that we're not qualified, they've had to allow us to come to the table. There's been a lot of false narratives. And so people should truly understand that. But when you look at what DEI has done, it truly has expanded opportunities without lowering standards. And people don't seem to understand that. That means talent and opportunity is what we were looking for. And we were allowed that. Because when you look at what was done, there were studies done and they used the same resume and changed the name. One name sounded maybe like Shaniqua, and another name probably sounded like Paul or Parker. And when you're looking at that and you have those two applications together, the Paul and the Parkers were getting the interviews and the Shaniquas were not, with the same exact resume. So when we look at what DEI did, it created fair access for all. It created a level playing field. And it also looked at some of the systematic disparities that we were already dealing with, like racial and gender pay gaps, Black applicants looking at us being considered. It was a holistic approach, and it included many identities, because it's not just Black. We have to think about underrepresented groups, including women, including veterans, people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus individuals, people from low and rural income backgrounds. All those are lumped into what we consider DEI. And so when we look at what it did for us, it allowed us to be able to come to the table and not be excluded because of our name, and not be excluded because of our race, and not be excluded because we are a female versus a male, and not be excluded because we don't look or think exactly like someone else. That's what it allowed. But now, y'all know what we're dealing with. We got all these false narratives. They're saying DEI is reverse discrimination now against white people. They're saying DEI is no longer needed. And we're in a post-racial society in their mind. And we all know that we're not. And they're saying DEI only focuses on race and it excludes other identities, and it does not, because I just shared all those identities that it really includes, but that's the false narrative that they're pushing right now.
Indeed. We want to take a chance to take an opportunity to bring Marcus Bass. Marcus Bass is the Deputy Director of the North Carolina Black Alliance. And the Black Alliance is a group of people, an organization that's working to enhance the Black community by promoting good policy, and also trying to develop leadership and develop leadership in youth. Marcus, if you have anything that you'd like to chime in on this, we would really be interested in hearing it through the lens of your organization.
Well, Chuck, it is very plainly to see, and I'm glad Senator first started with telling folks to read the bill. Most of our listening family, particularly in Eastern North Carolina, have heard about what is happening in hurricane relief right now. And sizably, there is a large investment in the West, and rightly so, in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And now you see residents in Eastern North Carolina that are still displaced from Hurricane Florence, and the relief and recovery and the investment is different in a way in which we know not because of the will of the people in Eastern North Carolina or Western North Carolina, but because of the will of the people in Raleigh, there's almost a different kind of take on the investment. Without DEI provisions, there'll be no way to really enforce equal support and funding for hurricane and disaster relief moving forward. That's on top of President Trump already cutting funding for disasters, for natural disasters. Understand that there are individuals in western parts of our state in California, I mean, of our country, really, in California, that are dealing with the aftermath of fires, and that relief is going to be slow. It is no kind of surprise that these policy attacks are happening, not just in areas that are majority Black parts of our country, but are also in areas that have Democratic governors in the midst of a Republican controlled General Assembly and a Republican president. This is the beginning of authoritarianism 101. There are 900 pages to Project 2025. There's only 5 pages to this bill that is being introduced at the House. In the House around House Bill 171. And it is very interesting to see that this is not just the beginning. Last year, Senator Smith can tell you there was a huge debacle across the state as our academic institutions and their DEI programs began being under attack. And those institutions were forced to fire or reassign individuals that have been working to provide DEI mandates. And I'm glad, again, Senator Smith mentioned that this is not just Black, even though they want to say DEI is Black. There's a lot of military veterans that are disabled that have benefited from DEI, got to 100% of their disability through some of these relief efforts. There are schools that have been created, scholarships in those schools that have been created in the midst of DEI. Charter schools have been a huge benefactor, Black charter schools. I know we're always talking about public versus charters, but in this case, when you remove the mandate to support and fund these types of activities, you begin to diminish the quality of life for individuals across the state. And we know what happens when urban North Carolina, when Charlotte, Raleigh gets a cold, Eastern North Carolina gets the flu. And these repeals of DEI that are following what we're seeing at the federal level, now they're happening in North Carolina again, because it happened under education. And now we're seeing it at the state level with some very important positions and offices in state government. And so watching this, standing with the North Carolina Legislative Black Caucus and leaders across the state that need to make sure that residents know this is happening is going to be important. Standing with the groups that represent disability rights and represent women's groups and issues in community. And of course, centering that understanding that the Black community has always been the target of policy. More recently, in the past decade plus, with this radical right-wing General Assembly, but we have the ability in North Carolina to fight back. We're doing that at the Supreme Court level with this challenge that Griffin has waged against 60,000 voters in North Carolina. And we'll do it right now in this attempt to repeal DEI, a provision that has really helped support the advancement of all residents in North Carolina. Everybody benefits when we remove racism and bias from the process of hiring and from the understanding of the investment in North Carolina.
You know, and thank you for that. You mentioned last year's attack on DEI in education. You know, with the Black community, with this radio station, you know, I'm a firm believer in telling people's stories. And we have a client of the radio station, a long-term, long-standing client who has always had an issue with his kidneys. And last year, earlier in the year, he was a recipient of a new kidney. His health has returned. He's back up to working and doing very well. Had an opportunity to talk to him, and he said that just out of the blue, he got a letter from his hospital that said that the policy that they'd had in choosing Black people, the policy had racism baked into the computer algorithm that chose Black and brown people to receive kidneys. And so if we're people who are non-believers in whether or not these DEI policies are important to the well-being of Black people, for this gentleman, it was life or death. And I'm wondering if there are any other stories like that, any people that you all know whose life and limb or their work, their home has been based on these policies. And is anyone still with me? I don't know if I took the floor and
this is William. I'm certainly still with you. While I do not know anyone in terms of life and limb, I do know of students who have lost scholarships, in particularly at Duke Divinity School, that is directly connected to what we're speaking of. And ultimately for me, this legislation really is not about merit. And in speaking with the example you just gave, this legislation is not about merit or fairness. This legislation is about control. It is about preserving an inequitable status quo, if you will, under the presence of eliminating preferential treatment that created the disparities in the first place. And so for me, as a pastor, theologian, scholar, theologically, these measures are completely indefensible, when you look at what the bill represents, it's not just a policy shift, but in my view, it is a strategic attempt to dismantle efforts aimed at fostering justice, inclusion, and equal opportunity. And so under the guise of neutrality, this legislation functions, in my view, as a mechanism of exclusion, as you've lifted, reinforcing systemic inequities, while claiming to promote fairness. And so lastly, I just want to address this portion that it is in effect, for me, a theological and moral affront to what we know as the Imago Dei, the image of God. And strangely enough, Dei, meaning God, DEI, is Dei.
That's right.
And it's a moral affront to the Imago Dei, the inherent dignity and worth of all people. Watch this, by codifying policies that disproportionately impact historically marginalized communities.
Well, can it be that bad? I mean, one of the main sponsors of this bill is a pastor, if I'm not mistaken, Pastor Jackson of Beulah Baptist Church, and I say that facetiously. How is it that the people who were the sponsors of the bill, how are they putting this bill forward as being of benefit to North Carolina?
Even during times of slavery, there was always somebody of our hue who would sound the alarm when our exodus, as Marcus calls it, was about to happen. And so this is no different. There is a difference, as you well know, as we all know. There is a difference between European or white Christian nationalism and those of us that come out of a theology of liberation. The sad part is that many of our people still, either knowingly or unknowingly, are a part of European Christian thought that has them looking at our community, strangely enough. When you look at what happened at the White House, when Trump was so-called celebrating Black history, at the same time he was making life difficult for Black students at HBCUs, Black and brown students, and to have a multitude of African-American clergy, both male and female, literally, in my view, in step and fetch it mode, in my view, dancing and drinking and laughing, even with an effigy of Jamal Harrison Bryant, and smiling, not in blackface, but using their own melanin, their own skin. It's a sad indictment that, in fact, many of these so-called religious leaders are going to have college kids, students in their churches. They're going to have disabled people in their churches. They're going to have veterans. All of the affected certainly are part of what we call the Black church that Donnie Swaggart got in trouble for speaking against some time ago. And so it's sad, but in terms of the theology, I prefer the liberation over the Christ that is going to oppress us.
Senator Smith, and thank you again for being with us. You're the chairwoman of the North Carolina Black Caucus. Are there any discussions that you can share as to how our Democratic senators and representatives are working towards fighting this bill as it moves up?
Well, I can tell you that we're not going to sit and say, okay, we're voting for it. And then I just want to make sure that I make it clear. The one who is leading this bill does not look like me. So when we're talking about this white Christian nationalism up close and personal, just so you guys will know. I don't think anybody who's on this bill looks like me. So what we're doing is, number one, the Legislative Black Caucus, we put out a statement to the press today, and we're going to be having a press conference tomorrow at 10. We're talking about not only at the federal level, but what's happening right here in our own chambers, what they're doing. And we're trying to get rid of that narrative that DEI, like they've taken something that's good and they tried to use it in reverse. And so we're standing up, of course, whenever it comes to committees. People are going to be talking about it, talking against it. I guess the major thing for individuals to know is in these positions, we need as many members as possible because we're in the minority right now. And so if this comes through the House, and if it actually makes it through the House and they pass it, then it has to come to the Senate. And then when it comes to the Senate, it has to go through all the different committees, and then it has to come to the floor. Now, I am hearing that we are having some of the leadership in the Senate saying, we don't want this. We don't want this. Now, that's what I'm hearing, but we don't know if that's the case. So I'm personally making sure that I am prepared to stand on that floor and to speak truth to power about what they're doing and call a spade a spade. Sometimes we do so much political speak that people don't truly understand what we're doing and what we're fighting for. So I think that many of my peers that's a part of the Legislative Black Caucus, and the best thing about it is we're 42 members strong. I'm very excited about that. I think that you're going to hear, if it comes to a floor debate in the House and the Senate, you're going to hear a lot from them. You're going to hear a lot of conversation. And our prayer after that would be for the governor, if it makes it past us, to veto it. That would be our prayer. Let's see what the governor does. But if that's vetoed and then it comes back to us because they want to try to override the veto, then my prayer would be that we stand strong, because we do have at least one vote that we gain at least one vote in the House, where if they can sustain the governor's veto, then it will fail. So I encourage everybody to make sure that they keep their eyes open, they keep their ears open, because we're fighting. But fighting means that you guys need to call your representatives, and don't just call individuals because they're like-minded. Don't call individuals because they look just like you. We need you to call everybody, mainly those people who sponsored the bill, and let them know what you feel. If they never hear from you guys, they think they're doing the right thing. And many times we don't say nothing, and we need to say something.
Indeed. I was wondering this, though. I'm an average middle of the road worker at my local workplace. I head home after work. I've got a couple kids that are in public school. Why does this even matter to me? Is what I would like for our guest today. If each of you could talk about that. Why does this matter if I'm not in politics, or if I'm not really politically active? Why?
So let's look at this. Why does it matter? So if they begin to tell our schools that we have to, like we've been through, just as Marcus said, they've been removing books because they have Black people in them. And they said they don't want their children to feel upset or guilty because of slavery and what their forefathers did to us. So you're going to see more in your schools that history will be whitewashed. Your children will learn less about how we have built this country, just to be nice. When it comes to jobs, and let's say our children are now qualified to get these jobs because they were top of their class. They did everything they need to do. They're not going to give it to them because they're going to say, well, they're Black. And that's a DEI hire. So it's going to affect them getting jobs. I mean, I have people reaching out to me now and saying, now they're reaching out. My job is saying to me that maybe I didn't do a certain thing. It's like they're looking to try to get rid of me. So the qualifications will not matter. If you do not look the way they want you to look, then you will not get those opportunities. And I think that when we look at the whole systematic disparities, those things are happening already. When it comes to buying a home, when it comes to buying a car, when it comes to anything that we do, there's already disparities that we have. And if they're successful with this DEI and this attack, where we once saw a community that looks like how it should look, a variety of people, a variety of thought, a variety of skill set, that's not going to happen. And to work for me under people who are mediocre at best, and knowing that I know people who are top notch, but they can't get the job because of their color, that's truly reverse discrimination that they're trying to do. And so those who are saying, well, how does it affect me? They'll see, because when President, not mine, but when Trump said that he wanted Hispanics not to take away Black jobs, he trying to put Blacks back into the field to do those jobs. So they're already trying to schedule it where we are pigeonholed into certain things. They don't care how smart you are. And if you guys go back and look at just the research that was done about the education level here, it will tell you that Black women are the most educated right here in this General Assembly. And those across the aisle are not, but that intimidates them. And so we're not going to be able to get those opportunities that we deserve. We already have to fight twice as hard. We have to work twice as hard. We have to be twice as smart. But then now to go through this, it's going to be, I can't even imagine how it would be, and it shouldn't be. Because if I was a company coming to North Carolina and I want the best, but you're keeping the best away because of the skin color, you're keeping the best away because you're putting this up and saying, well, we don't want women to do this. You're keeping the best away because you're keeping a veteran from having a job, or someone who is LGBTQ plus. You don't want them to work. And it's all about that. Then that's a problem. I think all of us should be afraid. Because when I look at doctors, I get a doctor that looks like me because I want my doctor to take care of me. And I know they had to work twice as hard. When they talk about being on a plane, if you have a pilot and the pilot is Black, they don't want to be on the plane. I would love to be on every plane I'm on to have a Black pilot, because I know they had to work twice as hard. And so all those people are at home every day. When they say it doesn't affect them, I think they'll start seeing it, because you see what Target has done. You see what Walmart is doing. You see what all these companies are doing when they're rolling back all this DEI. It's coming for you. That's all I'm saying. It's coming for all of us.
And that's my take right there. Exactly where Senator Smith left off. Watch the dollar. Don't watch DC. Watch the dollar. Think about the number of contracts at the state, local, and federal level that are provided right now to Black companies, to minority-owned companies, to women companies. Without a DEI mandate, those $1 million contracts will now have no reason to flow into hands of individuals that have historically and systemically not received those types of contracts. When we talk about cutting grass in certain government spaces, or paint jobs, or even building an entire development for city government purposes, a school, there have been millions, if not billions of dollars that have been earned by companies and corporations that are owned by Black folks that started in the 40s and 50s doing this kind of skilled labor, saw a policy shift to where they had to fight to get contracts through certifications and different types of skill level sets to rise up to be able to then compete at this level. And now with the repeal of DEI, imagine where those dollars are going. Donald Trump just yesterday introduced the idea of a gold card, while hardworking individuals that are working our agricultural fields right now are not going to be able to return. Individuals that can pay $5 million can walk right in through the gate. And I think in that regard, we have to understand that money fuels all these motives. They have tricked poor white working class folks into thinking that a vote for Trump is going to help improve their way of life. But in regards to what we've seen in the first 100 days of Donald Trump's administration, those have been the very people that have suffered the most. Individuals that I know that have worked in certain positions and jobs at a federal level that are now reaching out to me, folks that I went to class with in high school, they are just as surprised that DEI is, or the repeal of DEI is impacting them as well too. But the almighty dollar is what is ultimately ruining our country, and these decisions are connected directly to that investment or where that money should be going or where they think it should be going, which is typically wealthy white land owning residents and big billions. I'm not talking folks that just got a nice house on the lake. We're talking about people that own the lake. Those are the ones that whom this system is being set up for.
Pastor Clayton, would you mind chiming in on that? How is the reversal of a DEI bill going to affect your average North Carolina citizen?
Sure. On a larger scale, for me, the dismantling of DEI programs, truly increases social and economic inequality. This ultimately, as we all know, harms everyone. And so when you have fewer people that have access to education and jobs, as the senator has mentioned, crime rates rise, social mobility declines, and economic growth slows. And so the cost of exclusion doesn't just fall on those directly affected. It weakens, if you will, the entire fabric of society. And so again, for me, from a moral point of view, allowing injustice to persist without resistance is a betrayal of the fundamental belief that all people are truly created with inherent dignity and worth. Again, for me, it is about fairness. And if we believe in hard work leading to opportunity, then we must also care about dismantling the barriers that prevent many from having a fair chance to succeed.
Indeed. Thank you so much. At this point, I think it would be wise for us to switch gears. We've talked about education. We've talked about education as it relates to DEI throughout our conversation. But this week, there has been an incident, an event that has brought forth a lot more conversation about the Eva Clayton Scholarship. I think I would probably boil it down way too much. So I would, Deputy Director Bass, if you could please tell us what happened this week with the scholarship.
Well, I think I want to first make way to respect Congresswoman Eva Clayton, who at 90 years old is still very vibrantly fighting for Eastern North Carolina and for all of North Carolina in her capacity as a civilian, not just as an elected official. She has gone well beyond what we call the ladder of leadership and is still climbing in regards to helping and supporting us in our work and efforts. I also want to recognize the Clayton family. Dr. Clayton and a host of other individuals in his family have represented a legacy in this state that is unrivaled. When we think about the historic election of Congresswoman Clayton as the first Black woman and the first Black person to serve in Congress since the 1900s from North Carolina, it is amazing to think about how many individual lives that she has touched and impacted throughout her time here in North Carolina, invested in the work politically, socially, and in all the ways in which you would want someone to have a fellowship in their honor named. I think the North Carolina Democratic Party, in lieu of not seeing the results that they would like to across the board in an election where even the National Democratic Party didn't see Kamala Harris elected, there have been a lot of decisions and really growing pains and moments of reflection for the party that have resulted in also a prioritization of different things. North Carolina is, very unique because we still have one of the only contested races still up for grabs, with Justice Allison Riggs being challenged by Jefferson Griffin in this 60 to 90,000 votes, which, might I add, are majority black voters, even though there are some individuals that were targeted by the Republicans in Griffin that are white, particularly our military families overseas and individuals that are living overseas and voting here. Residents of North Carolina, legal residents of North Carolina, should I add, who are overseas and voting remotely, they're being challenged. Their right to vote is being critiqued because Griffin lost an election. When you look at, though, the long-term investment of the party, the Eva Clayton Fellowship is and should be one of the long-term investments that we make politically in our state. Is it the responsibility of the Democratic Party alone to celebrate and honor the work and legacy of Congresswoman Clayton? No. It takes each and every single one of us to recognize history in this moment is being attacked. When folks don't even recognize what has taken place over the past 4 years, how can we expect them to understand and honestly hold the legacy of 90 years? And so the Black Alliance has been in position, thankfully, because of the support of the Choice FM family, because of the work of individuals across the state that believe in the building of Black political power. We saw this as an opportunity to make sure that the prioritization of the Eva Clayton Fellowship is not up for political conversation anymore. We have in North Carolina at this time, as Senator Smith mentioned, the largest delegation of legislative Black Caucus members than any other time in the history of the North Carolina Black Caucus. Our organization, the North Carolina Black Alliance, is chaired by a Black woman in Congress, Congresswoman Valerie Foushee, who has been in contact with Congresswoman Clayton and has agreed that the longevity and sustainability of the Eva Clayton Fellowship is something that is not just a priority of the Black Alliance, but it should be demonstrated in our ability to work with the family to hold it in perpetuity. And so, for all intents and purposes, I know there's a longer conversation about what's going on with the Democratic Party, and I think there's room to talk about that and people on the line that are experts in that. But we are experts in the Black Alliance in Black leadership and in Black elected officials and the respect and legacy of what that means in a moment of DEI being an influence in corporations and in government. We can't let that trickle down effect happen in places where people are good intention but may not have the best opportunity. And we think that opportunity placed in the Black Alliance is a good investment for us and for the future young people who will have the opportunity to continue to be matured through the lessons of Congresswoman Clayton in their political endeavors.
Well, I have to say, initially, when I saw the news that the North Carolina Democratic Party was planning to divest of the Eva Clayton Fellowship earlier last week, I mean, my time has just been moving so strangely that I can't remember the dates. It was a disappointing surprise. I get it. Budgets are different. But there are things that, in agreement with you, should take priority. And really, my hat goes off to the North Carolina Black Alliance for leading this effort to make sure that this fellowship is in safe hands and will last in perpetuity. Dr. Pastor Clayton, could you take an opportunity and please talk to us about your aunt, Eva Clayton, and tell us why this fellowship is important to the Black community?
Well, first, I'll accept, William Clayton is fine. I'm a PhD student at Chicago Theological, so not quite doctor yet, but getting there. But my auntie mom, as I call her, and she is truly that. She is my second mother. And since my mother's transition in 2015, she is now my only mother. But I can tell you that even as a child, spending my summers at their home on Lake Gaston, as a child, it was never about recreation. It was never about having fun. She would take me to sit at the foot or at the feet of people like the late Floyd McKissick Sr. She would take me to tour how local municipal government was run. And so she was a first teacher. I tell people all the time that my father introduced me to politics and my mother introduced me to Jesus. And so she was also the other person most identified for me in terms of teaching me the political structure, watching her evolve into this national, in some ways, a global persona has been great, not just for our family, but I think for the community. And so just her legacy alone, I was sharing with a young brother who happened to be a white young guy who was having a conversation with me, and we are talking about his support of 47. And so I just simply asked him, I said, don't talk to me about the narrative. Just talk to me about the morality of it. Talk to me about what your parents taught you, your moral code. And if you can tell me that your moral code allows you to support this, then I'll accept you for at least being truthful. She taught us, our family taught us how to rebel, if you will, not just rebel, but to resist and to fight for equality. And so the fellowship means a lot. And I am thankful to the Alliance. I'm thankful to my brother, Marcus. I'm thankful for the Senate, for all of those who have made it happen. The move personally for me, means that we cannot wait for the permission to lead, and nor can we rely on institutions that do not have our best interests at heart to sustain our progress. And so the Alliance for me, and organizations like it, are showing us that we have to be stewards of our own advancement, shaping the policies, shaping the programs, and the initiatives that will define our future. And so this new home for the Eva Clayton Fellowship, the Black Alliance and Carolina Advance, is one that recognizes, in my view, the sustainable grassroots empowerment that best cultivates the spaces where Black leadership and Black agency and vision are indeed centered.
Director Bass, how does one qualify? Have we gotten this far with the fellowship? How does one qualify? How might the fellowship benefit someone who's listening to us right now here on Choice FM?
Before I answer that question, I want to say this, and Pastor Clayton definitely set the tone for why this is important in community. And two, this does not mean that the Democratic Party can't have a fellowship. There are many reasons why individuals may be interested in having, an experience directly with the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, by all means, can have fellowships for minority students. But I think when you look at the name and the legacy and what that means and represents, that's something that you have to be very careful with. In the South, in Eastern North Carolina, we have a religiosity to everything we do. And in a real way, we reverence rather individuals that have served and are serving in community in the midst of thinking about Martin Luther King, as we're still in Black History Month, even though that may not be a popular phrase to some and it may be removed from the federal government recognition in the future. We're still in Black History Month. And one of the things that I think is important is that we won't have other individuals like a Congresswoman Clayton. We won't have a Martin Luther King. We won't have a Fannie Lou Hamer or a Ella Baker anymore. And so we have to preserve and protect and teach that legacy to individuals. And that's a deeper responsibility than just a line item on the budget. And so for that reason, and for all intents and purposes, you can have any organization can come together with an opportunity to have interns or provide scholarship to students to get that experience. But when you evoke a name that means that much and you respond in a way in which calls into question the opportunity, there are other names that you can mention if you want to have have just a fellowship for the party. But in regards to the Eva Clayton, the Congresswoman Eva Clayton Fellowship, it needs to be in a space where what Pastor Clayton described, being able to sit at the feet of some of the greats in our country, the black men and women who shaped this nation. That is an opportunity that we want to provide in that same experience as if you are with Auntie Clayton, respectfully. And so I just think that that's very important to name. Now, for those that are interested in how their young person or how them as well as a young person can experience this fellowship and opportunity, we're in the stage now of receiving information from the party in regards to the execution of the fellowship. We recognize that there have been individuals that have put this together. I want to shout out Stephanie Pegues. I want to shout out Douglas Wilson. Those are individuals that helped work with the party to create this fellowship. And there have been years of engagement and former fellows even that we want to reach out to. So the first thing that we want to do is hear from individuals that have been impacted or have been a part of the process of supporting the Clayton Fellowship throughout the years. Then from there, we'll go through this process of receiving funding and setting up the institution by which can house and respectively transfer funds from whomever entities would like to support. And then we'll announce at our Black Summit ways that you can apply for the actual fellowship. The Black Summit will take place April 17th and 18th here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Individuals can go to www.ncblacksummit.org and get information about the summit and also register. But there we'll have more information. We'll have a chance to recognize Congresswoman Clayton and her entire family. We'll have Senator Smith there. We'll have our own Congresswoman Foushee there, hoping to have Congresswoman Adams there, and really to think about a state like North Carolina that has been through so much in the civil rights movement, so much in our history, to have a moment of where three Black women, two sitting members of Congress and one former member of Congress, the first Black woman to serve in North Carolina, serve in Congress from North Carolina, that deserves an acknowledgement. And so with them there, we'll have some formal announcements of the next steps and ways students can apply and engage, and the general public can support through time, talent, and treasure the fortuity of the Congresswoman Eva Clayton Fellowship.
Indeed. Thank you for that. It's the People Station, Choice FM 9210. We this afternoon are talking to Senator Kandie Smith and along with Deputy Director of the North Carolina Black Alliance, Marcus Bass. Pastor, I'm still going to call you Doctor. I just can't help myself. But Pastor William.
Thank you. No problem.
One piece I missed in your introduction. I did notice the involvement in an energy company. And before I go further, am I talking to the right guy?
You are talking to the right guy. We were a part of the expansion of solar in North Carolina in 2015, prior to the sunset of the solar tax credits in North Carolina.
Indeed, indeed. So we are having a conversation this afternoon about the new home of the Eva Clayton Fellowship. And we are also having a conversation about opening up the Pandora's box of racism here in North Carolina with the North Carolina Bill 171, which is an anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion bill that's been introduced here by members of the North Carolina Republican Party. I often ask the question, is there anything that I did not ask that any member of the group here would like to address, or something that we missed?
So I do think a lot of people have been in different stages of frustration, of anger, of astonishment, of shock over the past 4 months. And I hope that this moment, this month in particular, has been a wake-up call for everyone. I know Senator Smith has some immediate actions that she's going to share, reminding us about the opportunity around this one fight about DEI. I know we're also talking about this battle or the successful support or the longevity of Congresswoman Clayton's fellowship. But there is a moment here where, as Pastor Clayton said, where we as the Black community can come together, and the white community as well, that understands what's happening and what is wrong, and ban against what is happening at the federal level and at the state level. The will of the people is being ignored in this very moment, and I think we really must take a minute, understand that, the election is just one moment in time, but that is not the only opportunity we have to fight back. So we look forward to standing with the Clayton family in the long run. We look forward to standing with the Legislative Black Caucus. We look forward to standing with Choice FM and continuing this fight to make sure that our individuals recognize that we're already free. We just haven't claimed our prize. And so I'm excited to hear what the Legislative Black Caucus is doing. And we're going to be standing with them and ready to engage the community throughout the year with all of the individuals on this line. And we appreciate this opportunity.
Senator Smith, what is that call to action? Give me my marching orders.
Okay, so giving you your marching orders for us moving forward as a collective. I just want to make sure I heard the question. Someone tried to talk to me at the same time.
And I think that's important to ask too, Chuck, because not only is she the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, she is also the lead coordinator of Win with Black Women. And it just had Joy Reid on just this past Sunday, as individuals were seeing her being canceled from MSNBC. So her perspective on this, I'm very eager to hear.
And I'm just want to make sure I clarify Win with Black Women, North Carolina. So I'm with the North Carolina chapter. I'm a part of the national, but I lead the North Carolina chapter. And when we say what's next is we have to raise our voices. We can't sit silent and let all of this that's taking place continue to happen, because if we do, they're going to do more. But when you put people on Front Street, as I like to say, it makes them not want to do any and everything, because now people see it. When you take the covers off of individuals, they don't like that, because now everybody can see what they're doing. So I think next steps is everybody should be able to look onto the website, see who their representatives are. They need to be reaching out to them and let them know how they feel. I think as far as congressional level, they need to reach out to their congressperson and ask for a town hall. I think that everybody, when you look at the local level, they need to be going to their city council meetings, their county commissioner meetings, and their school board meetings to watch what they're doing, because nothing happens in silo. When they get marching orders, mainly from what we call the John Locke Foundation, it comes from the top and it goes through every division of our government. And before we know it, it's like a full takeover and everybody's like, well, I didn't know. So it's time out for excuses. And people need to make sure they're stepping up to be a part of the solution. And that's not just voting, but that's the fight even before the vote. They're trying to make it illegal to even register people. So we need people to get involved. All politics are local. And I encourage you to reach out, because I've had so many people reaching out to my office. You know why? Because they know I'm about it. I'm going to stand on business. I'm not afraid. I'll let them know what they need to do and connect them. If they don't know who their representative is, I'll connect them to them. I'll make sure they know, but we have to all come together to fight this good fight. And when the next election coming up, we have to be at those polls. We can't play games. We can't say, well, I only vote during presidential elections. We can't use excuses. We have to be on the front lines, because it's coming after us if we don't do something about it. And right now, the major thing is that voice, making sure your voice is continuing to be heard.
Pastor Clayton, what would be your marching orders for other Black pastors?
I think that the senator has summed it up well, and she is about it, as the young people say. But the fight for justice has never been easy. That's the one thing that I have learned. Certainly from my parents and from my family, that the fight for justice has never been easy, and what we're in now is a reminder that the forces of inequality, they don't rest, but neither do we. And so, in my view, if history has taught us anything, it truly is, as King said, that the arc of the moral universe may be long, but it bends toward justice. And so the work of justice does not end. And I loved the passion of the senator, because I recognize it's not just passion, but it is her action. She is fearless. And so it is our responsibility to push back. It's our responsibility to challenge these policies at every turn, and to ensure that those who seek to erase our progress do not go unchallenged. And our voices are our actions, and our unwavering commitment to justice, if you will determine whether North Carolina moves forward or slides backward. And strangely enough, in a state whose motto is esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem, it appears that we are neither on that side of the aisle at this point.
It's the People Station, Choice FM, special edition of Choice FM News. We had a wonderful opportunity, and I'd like to thank all of our guests this afternoon. Senator Kandie Smith, Pastor William Clayton, and the Deputy Director of the North Carolina Black Alliance, Marcus Bass. We'd like to also remind you that the North Carolina Black Summit is coming up. And Marcus, please make sure I'm right here. April 17th and 18th.
That's correct. That's correct.
The ncblacksummit.org. Let me remind you, ncblacksummit.org. Let's take just a couple of minutes to talk about the NC Black Summit before we go. Let's talk about that event. I attended last year. Incredible. This year, what are we looking forward to?
Well, I want to first make sure people understand the why. Very rarely do we get a chance to have all of our Black elected officials come together in one space to really have the conversations that are most pressing in this moment. We don't have to spend more time talking about what's at stake this year. We just spent the better half of this hour talking about it. But when you come to the North Carolina Black Summit, and our theme this year is charting our course through a crisis, we're in a crisis moment. And across North Carolina, there are individuals through natural disaster or through man-made disaster, through legislative disaster, through judicial disaster, through education disaster. There are crisis moments happening, and we have to come together to talk about how we can chart our course through. We know that time has shown us that we have the ability to make it through all of the different things that we're faced with right now if we come together. We don't oftentimes prioritize that coming together, and April 17th and 18th, we're going to come together in a way in which we can create change. We're having pre-conference sessions on the 17th that are going to be focused on more conversation around DEI and what's happening at the state level, and how local governments, especially Black elected officials at a state and local level, can fight back. Also helping advocates understand what they can do to work with elected officials that are trying to face, what to do in response to these DEI emergencies. We'll also have conversations around what's happening at the local level. And we'll also hear from individuals and honor other stalwarts in our community through the Senator Jeannie H. Lucas Luncheon, through our Ralph Campbell Leadership Reception. We'll hear from Black school board members. You'll hear from individuals and our municipal officials, and of course, our legislative and congressional leaders. All of that in 2 days for the Black community. And I'll tell you this, Eastern North Carolina historically has been the largest grouping of individuals. I believe it's because Choice FM is getting the word out there and letting people know, if you want to know what's happening in Raleigh, if you want to know how it impacts you across the state, you come to the Black Summit, get that information, and we're charting our course in this crisis together. So that's just a little tidbit, and we look forward to seeing everybody that can come at the Black Summit. Even if you can't come, though, we're in this fight with you, and we're committed to seeing change through our people. We can create the change that we need to see, not somebody else coming in state. We have the power in the state to create change. We've seen it before. We've seen it throughout February, Black History Month, since 1960 and beyond. And I think it's very important for us to use that power as we chart our course through what we're going through in this moment.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for taking part of this conversation today. Be easy. I hope your work and workloads are easy. I hope the work is light from this point forward. And we, again, thank you from Choice FM for spending time with us today.
The People Station. You know what I'm saying? Choice FM 9210.